afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name is Paul Simmons. I'm the CEO of the Global Identity Foundation. Here to talk about why identity is not the new perimeter, and also other misconceptions about zero trust. So to kick off with a little bit of history, if you like, it says a long time ago in a security team far, far away, you'll probably spot by the grey hair. I have been around in this business for probably too long to remember. And back in the 90s, we sort of had firewalls that sort of functioned as a security boundary. This actually is a little capture. This was from a corporate document that was handed out to staff to explain the corporate security policy. I won't name the company for fear of embarrassment. But this is how we used to do security. This is how we used to explain security. And of course, it's based on a bunch of flawed binary assumptions that you are on the intranet, you have a corporate device, we were all using Active Directory, your staff on payroll, and probably if you were doing any form of remote access, you also had a secure ID key. Horribly flawed today, especially in the zero trust world, but that's where we were. And as a security team and as a CISO, this is what we told the business we were building, and we were asking for lots and lots of money to put in all these nice new shiny toys. And the reality is that these things haven't worked since about the 16th century. This is what we were actually building. We sort of built these flawed models based on some interesting promises. And we promised the business that we provide them with a clean working environment. And again, in reality, this is probably what most people's environment looked like. Yes, we did clean stuff. Yes, we sieved out the lumps on the internet. Yes, we kept out the really obvious attacks and bad guys. But were we providing, absolutely drinkable, clean water? The answer is no, we weren't. And why? Because ultimately, and I sort of put my hands up as an ex-CISO, we were control freaks. It was really difficult back in the 90s, and we built up this environment where if you give it all to us, we'll make it work for you. And to do that, everything had to be inside the perimeter that we managed. And therefore, all authentication, typically back in the 90s, the early 2000s, in Active Directory, for most people, not all authentication had to be inside our identity and access management system that we managed in-house. And of course, it wasn't just that, it was, the SAP system and other systems as well that you had. And this was the result. The standing joke is that, IT security and IT are people that just, like to say no to the business. And the reality was that why do we get that reputation? Because security and IT inhibited the business. It's as simple as that. You only have to look at what actually happened, especially when cloud came in, which was the whole rise of going out and buying a cloud solution on your corporate credit card, because actually you were going to be able to bypass those idiots in IT and security who were telling you you can't do this. And we were the people who were stopping the business functioning. So around about 2000, early 2000, 2001, a bunch of us came together. There were about 50 companies initially. Obviously, you can, this is the standard slide with all the big household names on it. Hopefully, you recognize all of those. And why did we come together? And the answer is we came together because we all had the same business problem as CISOs of our and sort of chief security architects of our businesses. And we came together and formed this thing called Jericho. And this was the problem. Our businesses needed to collaborate. We were large global corporates. We needed to collaborate. We need to outsource. We needed to do joint ventures. We needed to do flexible working. And of course, in those days, we called them road warriors. All the people who were lucky enough to be able to justify getting a rather expensive laptop to go out on the road and work. And the security industry was doing this to us. The security industry was trying to sell us bigger deep packet inspection firewalls, IDS, reverse proxy, hardened perimeters. And we had a problem because the security industry didn't get it. So Jericho was founded really as a, if you like, a pressure group, a think tank, whatever you call it, to actually talk about the fact that these hardened borders that we were building as security boundaries were actually failing us as organizations. They were inhibiting our business for doing what they needed to do. And we weren't the only people around talking about this. This is from 2005. A really good guy called Dan Hitchcock produced this, and this was his interpretation of what was going on. Basically, that network controls were becoming more and more useless. Host controls were going up, but data controls were going to be where it's at in the future. And actually, Dan, I think you've got it pretty well spot on. And take us back to, this is May 1994 network. Well, Jeff Mulligan, as it says there, internet engineer at Sun Microsystem, described firewalls as a perimeter defense, hard shell around a soft center, just like a Cadbury egg. Now, he was a British engineer, so if you don't understand what a Cadbury egg is, it variously got translated to Smarties, which is the UK equivalent of an M&M. The hard candy shell around the soft, chewy center. And almost at exactly the same time, this guy called Stephen Paul Marsh was doing his PhD thesis at Stirling, and he was looking at a lot of the actually military analogies. It's a really good read. You can get it on the internet. And he coined the term zero trust, believe it or not, as part of his thesis. And his thesis was formalizing trust as a computational concept. And within Jericho, this was our sort of reason for working. This is our how we defined what we did as an organization and a discussion. And we basically said, look, this is what's happening to us from, start of the 60s, where we had standalone computing, up to where in the early 90s we got web, and the early web and email and telnet and FTP. And then we started to do collaborations. Along came VPNs, along came limited internet-based collaboration. And if you look at where we were going in terms of connectivity over time, the key drivers, if you look at it, are these three arrows on the right-hand side. Yeah, collaboration. Businesses need to collaborate. Business value that comes with that collaboration. And yes, there is a risk, but the board is prepared to take the risk and wants, therefore, IT and security to deliver something radically different so that we enable collaboration and business value and minimize the risk. And ultimately, for most large corporates at that point, that was actually the job description for the CISO or the CISO. And we published this in 2007. You can get it. Go to Wikipedia, look up Jericho Forum. Everything is actually linked off there. The thing we pointed out to people was, look, actually, when we started putting in these private connections, this is when we lost control of our LAN as a security perimeter. And then we got on to, well, how do you do computing in an environment you don't control? Well, we eventually called this thing cloud. We called it originally computing outside your perimeter, which I think actually is probably a better description for the layperson than cloud, because everyone, if they're not in the industry, they go, what is cloud? And obviously, we got up to the really interesting, thorny topics, which we got to in about 2012, of how do you share and consume identity in an environment you don't control? Which obviously, yes, identity is really important to zero trust. Is it the new perimeter? No, it's not. And ultimately, how do you protect and yet work with data in an environment that you don't control or manage, which is actually a problem we're still grappling with as an industry. So way back in, actually, originally version 1 was 2004. This is, I think, version 1.2, which was just a tidy up more than anything else. And the only one I'm going to look at to date is only 2 sides of paper. You can still download it. They're probably still as relevant today as they ever were. But the only one I'm going to look at today is 8. Which is authentication, authorization, and accountability must interoperate or exchange outside your locus or area of control. A bit of a mouthful, but worth delving into in terms of my original assertion. So what is a locus of control? In zero trust, a locus of control is the need to maintain all entities, attributes, or trusted signals within a single ecosystem or access control system to function. Now, this is right up to date. This is actually today's definition. This is out of the CSA's paper, Context-Based Access for Zero Trust. It's the current draft as of about 2 hours ago. And of course, how does this all relate to zero trust? Well, these are the original commandments. And of course, this is the famous John paper, No More Chewy Centers, published from Forrester in 2010. And I have to say, I was present in Boston when he actually launched this paper. So I remember it very well. And if you actually go and read this, you can again get it online. It's not a problem. If you look on page 9, it says zero trust demands that security professionals protect internal data, etc., etc., etc. You can read it for yourself. But the interesting thing, of course, is that John correctly credited, zero trust builds upon the deperimeterization ideas first socialized by the Jericho Forum. So if deperimeterization, the breakdown of the perimeter, is the problem statement, then zero trust, as described in John's paper, is the architectural response to the problem. Simple as that. So why is identity not the new perimeter? Well, yes, identity is at the heart of zero trust. Look, I do identity as my day job now, rather than being a CISO. No, the solution must enable the business and not inhibit it. And that's what perimeters do. And this is why. So this is what we call the identity and access management vicious cycle. So if you start on the left-hand bubble, to make this work, we must have a single IAM system that we control. This is the control freak locus of control mentality that still exists inside businesses today. And therefore, if you have that, my ZT access control plane can only link to my identity system, which therefore means that everything requiring access must be in my identity and access system. Thus, all systems must interact with my access control system. Therefore, to make this work, we have to have a single IAM system that we control. And we go round this loop time and time again. And what are we doing with this? Well, guess what? We are inhibiting the business. We are back to delivering something that the business doesn't need, doesn't want, and is actually, again, causing IT and security still to this day to be the people that like to say no. So, questions to ask yourself. If you are doing this, if you're involved in these particular areas, here's some sort of, I like nasty questions to ask people. My team used to say, Paul is particularly technically knowledgeable, but he at least knows the nasty questions to ask, which I'm sure was a compliment, but I'm never quite sure to this day. Questions to ask yourself. Here's the first one. This is the biggie. Can entities we don't employ, manage, or vet access the systems they need to without needing to enroll them individually? I sat talking to one vendor, a good probably 5 years ago, and we went round in this vicious cycle of, so how do someone we don't own access our systems? Well, they just install our software. But what if they can't install your software? Well, they just install our software. But they can't because they're using lockdown machines and their corporate policies don't allow them to install third-party software, and they already have something on their systems. but they just install our software. And we went round in this vicious circle until I got fed up with the discussion and politely said, thank you very much, and walked off. Can I support real bring your own device? As opposed to, we can support bring your own device as long as actually you install the corporate standard on it. And if external auditors turn up, usually using very locked down machines, can I give them access to my systems for their laptops and just simply give it to them within minutes? And again, if you can't solve those problems, you're not doing this stuff right. And yeah, this is the big one, especially with sort of something like mergers or joint ventures, is can I simply set up a collaboration between 10 disparate people and organizations? Because generally the answer is no, we have to do something horribly complex, or we'll go out and buy a cloud solution or do a special. And we shouldn't need to do that in this day and age. So I'm going to argue that true zero trust starts from a point of anonymity. And there's lots of reasons for this. This is a whole separate presentation on identity and the principles behind identity. But here is the sort of, again, I like acid tests. If a visitor arrives on site and wants to find out what's on the menu in the works canteen, and the works canteen, because it's a nice modern environment, guess what, provides the menu via a portal on the LAN, can they just access it without needing anything enrolled on their device, without needing to be enrolled at all? Because actually it's public information. It just happens to be on a server which is on our LAN that we're trying to protect. So do what is what you are implementing on your site, on your systems, going to enable that to happen seamlessly? So zero trust should be about enabling the business. Hopefully that comes as no big surprise to anyone. It needs to be agile because that's what the business needs. It needs to collaborate easily with joint ventures, third parties, you name it. And it needs to facilitate today's heterogeneous business environment. And it should be driven by the business, not IT or security or the vendors. And it should enable a risk-based approach to access. And hopefully that comes as no surprise, because you'll see those kind of statements on most things, irrespective of whether it's a presentation about identity. But the reason I'm here today is really this, from this guy, Winston Churchill. It's certainly attributed, but lots of other people actually. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Understand the principles of why Jericho did deperimeterization in the first place. Deperimeterization was a statement of what was happening to us. Our borders started to look like Swiss cheese because we kept on having to punch holes in them for the business. So in conclusion, zero trust is it's not a product. It's not a VPN replacement, and it's not a new locus of control for the IT department and the security people to actually be able to say no with. And it's not the new perimeter. Zero trust should be a business enabler. It should be a collaboration tool. It should be driven by business strategy and business need. And it's a strategy that I'm going to argue, if you do it properly, should be enabled by identity and not strangled by it. So with that, that's me. That's how to get in contact with me. I hope this has made sense. Just remember, if people say to you, identity is the new perimeter, it might be a great buzzword, but it actually underlies the problem is they don't have the first clue of what they're actually talking about when it comes to zero trust implementation. And with that, thank you very much indeed.